Welcome to the Afghanistan Project Podcast. I'm Beth Bailey here with my co-host Michael Cook. Today we are excited to talk with Jonathon Alcocer, a pastor and a 22-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force. During his military career, Jonathon deployed more than 10 times in support of Operation Allied Force, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and Operation Enduring Freedom. In addition to his ministry, Jonathon helps veterans dealing with suicidal ideation by using equine and guitar therapy. Jonathon, we're so grateful to have you join us this evening from Zambia, where you've been stranded for 2 months after being slapped with 22 charges of human trafficking and dealing with a hellacious detention scenario in Zimbabwe because of your efforts to evacuate 4 special immigrant visa applicants and their 18 family members.
Thank you for having me.
Just for some background for our listeners and for us, Jonathon, when and why did you start volunteering to assist Afghans after the withdrawal from Afghanistan?
Well, I got the call back towards the end of January when Ben had reached out to me from Founders Fields and asked if this was something if I'd be willing to do. And before he could even finish, I was like, when am I going? The reason is, I've always told people out of all my deployments, Afghanistan has always been the worst and the best one. I've done a couple of trips there. It's the worst because of the things that we had to do and, the things that I've seen and went through. But it was the guys that I was with that made it the best. And then being around the villages and getting to know the families out there. Those guys, they've always had a special place in my heart.
Absolutely. I think everyone we've talked to has had some kind of connection in that way. And it is, the Afghan people are very special, very open, and they really make a place in your heart. There was in February, that was the timing when Ben and others decided that these 4 Afghan special immigrant visa applicants needed to get out of Afghanistan and Pakistan. What was the reason that February was go time for these individuals?
It came down to the Taliban had issued kill warrants on all the members that I'm with. Right. And so when they issued out the kill warrant, it's not only for the men, it's for their wives, it's for their kids, for any of their family members. So once we got that word, we had already had them in Pakistan, and then we pushed them into Zimbabwe, which is where I met up with them. So once we got the word that, these guys were, the kill warrants were issued, it was we had to go. We had to move.
And why Zimbabwe? Of all the places that you could have gone, is there a reason that Zimbabwe was chosen?
That one, it was an easy route, right? Because the next destination, which I know we're going to get into, was South Africa. And, they allowed the visas on arrival. Everything was done. And, we set them up out in Zimbabwe for a couple of weeks prior to us even moving them into South Africa, only because there's a camp out there, Camp Igniana or something like that. Absolutely beautiful place. And it was just kind of a time for them to just kind of recompose themselves, resettle. They've been pushed around all through Afghanistan. They made it into Pakistan. And this was just, it was just a time to give them some relaxation, regain some peace. And I can show you pictures of that camp where they were at. I mean, you had wild elephants walking up to the campfires, drinking out of the pool out there. They loved it out there. So it's pretty much why we went there.
How did you get them to Zimbabwe from Pakistan? Or did they just jump on commercial flights? Like they didn't need special visas or anything? Or
yeah, nope, they just jumped on a commercial flight. Flew them right in.
Yeah. And were these interpreters or what? How did they qualify for the SIV program?
So you have, with me, you have a couple of guys who were, 20 years in special forces. They're commandos. So they work side by side alongside of us. I mean, these guys have been fully vetted by the U.S. They were allowed free range on any installation in Afghanistan. And you had another individual who worked for the U.S. Embassy for about 12 to 13 years. That's what qualified his status. And then there was another one, civil engineer, who also worked for the embassy as well. So that's kind of what gave them their qualifications.
Mm-hmm. And then so you meet up with them in Zimbabwe. You guys get organized to make your next move, and then what happens?
So then we get reorganized in Zimbabwe, and then we make our push into South Africa. We had chartered a bus, and we went from one site, which I can't say the name of that site, to the border of Zimbabwe, where we out-processed Zimbabwe. There were no issues there. And then we made it over to the South African border. And the moment just right upon arrival, things hit the fan. These guys, they went up, did what they were told by their legal team, and asked to claim asylum right there at the border. Now, keep in mind, their lawyers were present. They were about 2 hours away at the time, by the time we got there. And it was just a flat out no. They didn't want to deal with it, completely violating international law. So there was quite a commotion down there at the South African border, which, their lawyers finally, they finally got there, and then it was just a big battle right there at the border. And, calls were being made. And at the end of the day, what it boiled down to at the end of the day was, the lawyers were going to meet back up with us at 10 a.m. South Africa had made a call to Zimbabwe, and they told us that we could park in between the South African border and the Zimbabwe border. And we got escorted there, right? So we're in no one's territory. We're kind of in the middle ground. And that's where we kind of stayed until we were, pulled into the Zimbabwe side. During that time, Zimbabwe had confiscated everybody's passports and took control of them. And, as Americans, we're not supposed to give up our passports like that. And they're not supposed to take control of them. Now, you can look at my passport right now. You'll see me enter Zimbabwe, exit Zimbabwe, enter South Africa, exit South Africa, and that's it. I have no other stamps showing that, and neither do any of the personnel that I'm with, that will show you that we spent 4 days in Zimbabwe after we were kicked out of South Africa.
So what happened to you as you were on that bus between the places? Were you being interrogated by officials? What were they trying to figure out?
So when they pulled us into the Zimbabwe side, we were, detained on the bus. Later that night, because, we've been traveling, that day ended up being at least a 24-hour day. They pulled in all the adults and they interrogated us one by one. And then trying to figure out what the story was, who we were, why we got sent back to Zimbabwe. We tried to explain to them, listen, there's about to be a legal battle that goes on in South Africa. We should be going back there tomorrow once it all gets resolved. But no, then they just interrogated. That's all they did. All the adults got pulled off the bus. Kids were forced to stay on the bus, under watch by some of their customs officials or immigration officers.
And how long was it until you were able to leave that area?
We were there for 3.5 days, confined in the bus. Now we had hired two drivers as well, who come to find out, these poor guys, all they did was fight for us. They speak the local language and they were trying to fight for us, and they ended up being blacklisted and not able to go into South Africa. And one of them resides there. So, some of that stuff got cleared up. But no, we were there for 3.5 days, just right there at the border, confined to the bus. And I think you saw the video that I did while we were on the bus. And that's what kind of got Zimbabwe's attention.
Absolutely. And what was their reaction to you? What did they decide that they were going to do about your presence in Zimbabwe?
Right, I got threatened to be arrested at the border, um, because I was with them. And, um, they finally, they had enough of it. So the whole plan was, okay, you're not going to be in our hands. We're going to get you out of here. We're going to put you on another bus, send you 8.5 hours away to the capital of Harare, where then we're supposed to meet with at the immigration headquarters. Because the lawyers, what was supposed to be a day of trial, the trial just ended a few weeks ago. So they wanted us out of the border because they knew had they kept us there, we were going to flood that entire border with nothing but media.
I see. And I think you've told me in the past that you were asked to get rid of some of the footage that you took on that bus, correct? That the Zimbabwean officials didn't want you to share that?
Yeah, well, we had put it out, and they saw it. They saw the video that I did on the bus, and it made them look real bad. Because on the bus, the drivers weren't allowed to go get fuel, so we have no AC, and the kids are just pouring in sweat. Um, there's no food, and they didn't want the world to see that. So the deal was, if we take it down, we won't expose all this. But then, they kind of reneged on that deal.
Correct. I mean, your whole trip, that 8.5 hour journey by bus, can you tell us what happened during that bus trip? Because they clearly did renege on
Yeah. So
that.
once we tried to stall as much as we could. We got them to, let the kids go to the bathroom because the immigration bus that they pulled up was a 15 packs bus. Right, there was 20 at the time. There was 25 of us, just of us. And the first thing that we notice is that it's just pouring out diesel fuel. We're like, listen, if we're gonna have to drive 8.5 hours away, we're not gonna make it, especially if we're leaking this much fuel. So, we kept trying to stall. Eventually, one of the driver actually, he was like, started blaming it. He's like, it's these Americans' fault that these Afghans are in trouble. Trying to like stir the pot, right? And so, they forced us onto the bus with all of our luggage. Um, and then, so you have the 25 of us, because there was three Americans, 22 refugees. And then there was another, there was a driver and at least 5 other people, immigration officers. 2 of them were in civilian clothes. And then we, packed in on that bus. When I boarded the bus, I sat in the back because I stayed in comms with the ground team back in the U.S. And, sitting next to me, I have 5 kids like piled up on top of each other. And, I've given them as much space as I can. But then that's when what I call the psyops, that's when that kicked in. Because they're just blaring that just ridiculous music where it just thumps bass. We asked them numerous times if they could turn it down because the kids were at least trying to sleep. And then we made an 8.5 hour drive. So while we were driving,
I'm sorry, Jonathan. Who was playing the music?
The immigration officers. When we would
so
ask
they were just
them,
blasting music at the bus.
Yeah, blasting it. When we were like, if you've ever been to SEER or any type of training like that, and you go through that type of environment where they're trying to get you to break, that's exactly what it felt like. And so, we've got kids that have urinated themselves. They're sitting in their own feces because when we would ask to stop for a bathroom break, the females, as part of their culture, they're not going to get out and expose themselves, and the females won't put the children in that situation as well. When we would ask them to turn down the music, they would turn it up louder. They're drinking wine, they're drinking beer, the drivers partaking in all the alcohol as well. It's just trying to get a rise. And on one of the stops, I'm sitting in the very back, like I said, and the driver gets out, won't let anybody else off the bus, and comes back to the end and visibly exposes himself to the children that are right there. And I have, sitting next to me, I have it was 4 little girls and a little boy, 12-year-old. And I kind of just had them, put their heads down. And he's looking at me the entire time, just trying to get a reaction. Just trying.
He's trying to make you do something, like hit him or something, so he can arrest you.
Yeah, get him, because like I said, I'm in the back of the bus. He's trying to get me to yell, do something, correct him, say something. And I'm just looking at the girls and the little boy, and I said, just keep your heads down. Don't worry about that guy. And at one point, he actually drove into a rest stop area where we thought he was going to let the women and kids out to use the bathroom. And he just kind of drove around in circles and then just went back out on the way.
It's just abhorrent behavior. And we haven't talked about this yet. So the 5 children were next to you, but in total, there were 11 children of the 22 Afghans, correct? And what were their ages?
So I've got kids with me that are 15 all the way down to 6 months old. The ones that were sitting in the back were between the ages of 12, 9, 2 9-year-olds, a 7-year-old. I want to say 5 or 8, something like that. Yeah,
and so by the time, go ahead.
No, there's a total of 11 kids.
And by the time you get to Harare, most of them have been sitting in urine and feces for a good portion of that ride.
Yeah. So, originally we were told that we were going to be taken to the immigration headquarters, and they decided, to make a stop at a bar where they got some more booze. I mean, the bus is being walked by hookers, drunk guys. I mean, just flagrant. And then instead of going straight to the immigration headquarters, we ended up at the police headquarters, right? So we get there, and at this point, I'm asking them, like, listen, these kids need to go to the bathroom. The women haven't gone to the bathroom in over 8.5 hours. I have a mom who's nursing a baby. She hadn't been able to change that baby because there's physically there is no room to do it on this bus. And when I exited the bus, and immediately we're swarmed. There was about 10, 15 officers that approached the bus, and meanwhile waiting for a bride. And I mean, that's just the way Africa works. Let's be real, right? But the decision was made not to pay because that could have jeopardized the families. They could have the trust wasn't there as it was. So it was we pay it, which we had the money, and then risk further damage or not jeopardize it, the lives of the families, because people already knew, all the ground team, the U.S. Embassy already knew that we were being escorted to the immigration headquarters. So they tried. It was all just their, the scare tactics, trying to get somebody to break. So they let the women and children board the bus, but never let them go to the bathroom. And we were on ground for about an hour and a half or so. It was just constant coming on the bus, taking a look around, having people get off, no, get back on, but nobody was allowed to use the restroom at that point.
What happened when they realized you were not going to pay the bribes?
That's when, so then we boarded back on, and then we went to, they finally took us to the immigration headquarters. Once we get there, um, the first thing that we asked was, listen, these women and these kids, they need to use the bathroom. They're sitting in their own, urine. They're sitting in their own feces. They need to change clothes. Um, so they take us to the immigration headquarters where they pull us all up into one room, and then it was one big interrogation session again. Right? Only this time, everybody's in the room. You've got kids crying, people running around. There's multiple conversations going on. And at one point, myself and another individual, we got pulled out to talk with the head of immigration, where he kind of broke it down to me and was like, listen, this isn't looking good for you guys. These are your best options, which is when he started to talk about, we needed to find a different country to be in. Because at this point, everybody wanted to see us either A, arrested, me and the two Americans, and B, every Afghanistan deported back, or Afghan deported back to Afghanistan.
And what was their plan for you to exit the country?
Initially, they gave us 7 hours. They gave us 7 hours to get 25 visas and 25 plane tickets out of the country. And they said we had to be out that day. While this is going on, representatives from the U.S. Embassy showed up, along with a lawyer who was sent over by the Afghans legal team. Because at this point, I was pulled aside and told, you're looking at 22 counts of human trafficking if you guys don't get out of here. And, I asked him, I said, what kind of weight does that carry? He's like 2 to 3 years per person. I was like, so minimum 66 years. He goes, yep. I said, that doesn't work for me. I don't have that much time left in my life. He said, so there's something we got to do about this. Just kind of pissed him off a little bit. But at the end, I had him laughing. So the members from the U.S. Embassy showed up, and they're going back and forth with the immigration commander. They're coming back and they're telling us, listen, this is what he's saying. These are the terms. And meanwhile, the team back home is frantically working on getting visas, getting plane tickets. And what it boiled down to is when they found out that we were able to do some of them, because they started seeing the results, they changed it from 7 hours to 4 hours. But we had to leave that day. And we told them, listen, it's not going to happen. There's no plane that has 25 seats leaving tonight to Zambia. So it's going to have to be the next day. So.
And what did they do with you while you had to wait?
So once we were able to get all the visas, thankfully, I'll tell you right now, the president of Zambia was a godsend. We have a contact within that system, and he's the one who issued emergency visas. Had he had not done that, these guys would have been deported directly back to Afghanistan. And we wouldn't be having this conversation probably unless somebody got me out. So, we told them, listen, we did everything that you asked for. We gave us 7 hours. We did it in 4 hours. Is there any way that we can at least stay at the airport? And they're like, yeah, you know what? We'll make some arrangements for you. We're like, awesome. We're like, we've set a room aside for you guys. You guys can all sleep there. You'll have free range of movement. You guys, there's bathrooms there. There's food there for you. Everybody knows that you're coming. There's no problems whatsoever. That turned to be out a bunch of bullshit. Because as soon as we got there, we were taken in. We processed through the airport. our bags were checked by the airlines, and then they took us down to the basement. Now, I want you to keep in mind there was 2 U.S. Embassy personnel walking down there with us. And they put us all into this one, well, you saw the pictures, the detention center, little detention area. I mean, it had the cage, the works. And right outside there were 3 perfectly working bathrooms, clean. And they still, at that point, would not let us in, would not let us out. So the members from the U.S. Embassy, they watched them shut the gate, put the padlock on, and that was it. One of the ladies that was with me, due to some of the trauma she's experienced, had a massive panic attack, and so they pulled her up and put her and the other American in another holding cell, which gave her more room, a little bit more freedom. Meanwhile, I stayed behind with a 22, and the living conditions, the temperatures inside there were just like I told you before, it was at least 90. We had one working toilet, no toilet paper for the women, and then we were just left with water bottles, and they got us some apples. They said they would come by and check on us and let us out so we could take the kids to the clean bathrooms, but they never came back at all. And so, we got in there on the 18th, and we didn't fly out. We got in there on the 18th at I want to say it was 16:30, and we didn't fly out until the 19th, later on that evening, around, I think it was 20:30 before we flew out.
And where was the U.S. Embassy staff during this time?
Well, once they saw them lock us up, they left. They left.
And so they weren't advocating for you anymore at that point. They knew.
No, they knew
and
they saw that we were going to be leaving, and they said, "We're done." But no, they watched.
Do you have
it happen.
Do you have any idea why they would have left you to your own devices with the officials in those circumstances? Did they see how disgusting those cells were? I think we need to talk about how utterly disgusting it was in that detention facility. They
walked in and took a look around.
So they saw the bugs in the toilet, the bugs crawling on the walls and floor, the shower facilities that were full of mold, and it looked like mold.
Yeah. They saw the trash. They saw everything that had been left out. I mean, you saw the pictures. There's just a mountain of immigration paperwork. That's why I took the picture showing the date that it was recent, same year. I mean, it was just nasty. And you saw one of the beds that they left out for us. We're like, really? This is what you expect these people to?
Dirty mattresses, no sheets. There was an 18-month-old sleeping on top of a pillow on a giant metal cabinet system with her poor father with his head in his hands next to her. I can't imagine watching my 18-month-old child having to sleep in those conditions on a pillow on top of a cabinet.
It definitely brought out a lot of fear, especially within one of the guys whose letter I'll read. He had actually been captured and tortured before, and that sent a lot of fear into him. His wife, who had to relive all that. The videos that I sent you of me doing the interviews with the wives themselves, the females in there, the moms. It was horrible for these guys.
So what happened when you guys got out of there?
They finally, the immigration they still tried to play games. Because upstairs, while I'm downstairs in the basement, um, the immigration officers go up to the lady that was there. Along with, it was Ben's dad that was with us, and show them the papers that now we have warrants for our arrest if we don't leave, and still trying to push that intimidation. Right? They waited until the very last second to release us. I mean, they sent the airline people down to grab the rest of the bags. They got all the tickets. They gave us our boarding passes, and then they finally released our visas. So once they let us out, they let us out probably it was about 45 minutes prior to takeoff. And um, unbeknownst to them, there were Department of State officials on standby in case, they tried to pull any other stunts, trying to keep us in country for something. So,
How has it been in Zambia for you all? Have you run into any snags legally
no,
there?
no, Zambia has been absolutely amazing. Like I said, had it not been for the president here, every single one of these members would be in Afghanistan right now. The people here are absolutely amazing. Um, they're very, very humble. The hotel that we were staying at, they were welcome in with open arms. Everybody here, South Africa made it known to everybody who we were, where we were going, so there was no hiding it. Um, and once I started making friends with some of the locals and some of the staff here, um, they kind of got to hear the backstory of what happened, and they all said the same thing, how poorly those guys were treated. But Zambia's been amazing.
Mm-hmm. So where are they in their SIV process, and what's the overall goal, and how long do you think you guys are going to be in your current location?
Well, there's so many steps. So with the SIV process, that could take up to 5 years, right? So that's the whole point of resettling them right now. Um, one of the things that we did agree upon with Zambia was that they wouldn't claim asylum here, but there's still options for them to resettle, where the kids can go back to school. You got to keep in mind these kids haven't been in school in almost 3 years now. The little girls
Mm-hmm.
will never go back to school if they get sent back to Afghanistan. Um, and I mean, we see the news, we hear all the updates, um, but there's a lot of people pulling for them out here. But we are in talks with other countries because it's not something that you can just show up and be like, hey, listen, we're here to claim asylum. Certain countries are accepting Afghan refugees, but the problem that I keep running into is that the moment you mention the country Afghanistan or Afghani, person, doors are shut. It's hard enough to get them on planes, much less get them into a country that will take them in. But there are countries out there that we are actively talking to right now as more of a long-term solution until their cases are processed in. Now, just because they're on SIV cases doesn't guarantee them that they're going to be granted into the U.S., which is what you'll hear me talk about in the interview that I push out, which it's complete. It pisses me off. It does because this administration, they opened up their southern border, and but the moment of an Afghan crosses, they're put in detainment, they're confined, and deported back, unless they have people fighting for them, right? So it's just it's a humanity thing. These guys, especially the two of the guys that I'm with, they have damn near given their lives fighting alongside of us. They have saved U.S. service members. I've got letters of accommodation, recommendations from 3rd Group Special Forces commanders, 7th Group Special Forces commanders from these guys, and the list goes on. The battles that they fought, are talked about on the American side, but we're missing our allies who fought alongside of us as well.
It's so devastating to see that. And they're also dealing with the pain of what their countrymen are going through right now, too. What has that been like for them, those struggles, as they're witnessing what's going on back home?
It eats them up. They mourn the same way we do. They grieve the same way we do. As vets that, have seen combat, we've lost guys in combat. What I tell people, the difference is we get to go home at the end of a deployment. They stay in the shit. That's their life. One of the guys, his wife, they've been married for 12 years, and she only saw him for 3 years while he served because he was constantly fighting. So they don't get that decompression time. They constantly battle it, and every day they're getting videos, pictures of their soldiers who were just killed. I mean, just last week, 9 of them, I believe it was 7 or 9, that were just ambushed and executed. All of them are in their phones, and we listen to voice messages. They were reading me text messages that they just sent back and forth within this past month. They're getting videos and pictures of their former soldiers being tortured, looking for other people. So it eats them alive. It really does.
And that's something that, it seems to me, special forces personnel, many of them don't have access to the SIV program. And we've talked to other people. Leslie Merriman comes to mind, who was supporting an SF or 2 SF individuals who ended up, rather than living in hiding and in constant terror, they were recruited by ISIS, because then they would make an income and they could fight the Taliban. And I wondered, have any of the SF personnel that you have supported gone on to other, avenues of work besides living in constant fear?
Yeah. And right now, I know for a fact that are fighting alongside Russia. Russia's recruiting these guys because they know that they can pay them. And these guys are going because it's the only thing that they can do to support their family. They can't return to Kabul, because if they do, they're dead. So then they get recruited, and Russia knows this, and Russia will pay them. So Russia pulls them over, and then they go fight alongside Russian forces. One of the guys.
So these are ANA commandos who, instead of living in fear in Afghanistan for the lives of the Taliban, they're getting paid to go to Russia and getting sent to Ukraine to fight.
Yep.
That we paid to train, who trained alongside us, and now they're engaged in this fight against.
Yeah. I mean, they literally, they have no way out, because it costs money. And, with the Taliban controlling the Pakistan border now, and our government's working deals with the Taliban at times to open up, close the border. I mean, the list goes on, so these guys, they're doing everything that they wouldn't do just so that they could provide for their families who are in hiding. Because right now, every day the Taliban is going door to door looking for people who fought alongside of us, right? And, we left our base we left Bagram, right? The Chinese is running out of there. And they're now using the technology that we left behind to track some of these guys. So it's just an ongoing system of these guys. They have no future unless we're able to get them out.
And I'm sure it's easy for people. I'm sure it's easy for people that are listening to, look down on the people that we're talking about here that went to fight with Russia. But it's like, I don't blame them. I mean, I doubt you guys blame them either. It's like, put yourself in their shoes. Like, do you want to live in hiding of the Taliban, or do you want to take your family somewhere where you're not going to be murdered?
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty easy option to me.
Yeah. We've left people with really impossible circumstances to try to navigate.
Yeah.
Well, I think that you had done some question and answers with those two of the SIV applicants who are with you. And as our return viewers know, we always close out our podcast with letters written by the people of Afghanistan about the ordeals that they've gone through in 2 decades of conflict and this tumultuous return to Taliban rule. But today we are lucky because Jonathon was able to ask some really probing questions of 2 of the men who are with him. And so we'd love it if you could ask or read us those questions and answers and let us know kind of what struggles mentally are going on with these SIV applicants.
Yeah. So, I asked them a couple of questions. The first one, you blame the Biden administration for what's happened to you and your family and what recently happened to your comrades, referring to the 7 that were just ambushed and executed, right? The response that I got was, yes, but now we can't do anything. They were our friends, like our brothers. They were our Afghan brothers. We treated them like in our U.S. Army. They are like my brothers, and we want they help us now because Taliban want to kill us and we need safety. And then the other one replied, I can't express my feelings about loss of my friends and colleagues. It's not something easy for me and my brother Maksud. Still, we are not coming out of this shock. It's a very hard situation to hear you lost your brother. We all worked together, days and nights, and made a lot of good and bad memories during our missions. Honestly, it's the bad feelings in the world to hear your enemies kill your brother and you can't do anything. The Taliban even do not let their families to see them for the very last time, meaning like the Taliban took control of their bodies and they exposed it. I can send you the picture of that. To pray, to see them for the very last time, to pray for their bodies. It's happened. It's happening and will happen to all our comrades who are in Afghanistan. These people was on the front line and killed till the news came out that every day the Taliban killed those soldiers who are not famous and no one is there to make their news. Talking about, their other soldiers, because the people that were just killed were some high-ranking officials, right? These both the men that I have with me are former colonels. They're SOF commandos. Their ranks were colonels. Every day the Taliban is killing Afghan youth soldiers secretly. They do not allow anyone to share their news or their name. I am hearing this every day and cannot do anything for them. Even can't express my feelings for them. These crimes the Taliban are doing every day is not only affecting the family members, but all Afghan people. So that was, kind of the response in the interviews that I did with them as well. It was, how do you feel about this administration, and you'll get to hear the moms actually address Vice President Harris, mom to mom, on how they feel their children are being treated right now. So that'll come out here shortly. Then I asked them,
Sorry.
I asked them,
you can edit this out, Michael.
You okay?
I'm just dying a little bit. I'm good.
I asked him, when you first heard about what happened, what did you think? When they first heard about the withdrawal, and then they started hearing all the news about their friends. This is the hard part to read. That was so bad. We skipped about 3 or 4 times, meaning they got away from them a few times. Got away from the Taliban, and they could get my phone and my cards, and now they are searching about us to kill us, so meaning searching for us, trying to kill us, because they have all the information about us from my phone and my cards, and we can't hide in Afghanistan. I'm deeply sad. It's not the first time we lost our colleagues and friends. I've gone through this situation and danger for 20 years. I spent 20 years of my life fighting and seeing my soldiers and colleagues die in front of my eyes and can't do anything for them. But I continue to fight for them in our shared goals of peace and freedom. I was a Special Force commander and worked with U.S. and NATO forces for 20 years in all provinces of Afghanistan. We faced a lot of danger and challenges during our shared missions. But my aim was to get out of the mission successfully and for everyone on our team, especially U.S. forces, to be safe. I and my team were honest, and we fought for freedom and peace till the end. I can tell you right now, I've had to talk these guys off the ledge on countless occasions because of what they've gone through just in the last 2.5 months. They would rather die in their country alongside their men. I have to constantly remind them that we're not soldiers anymore, that their mission is to fight, for their families and the future of their kids. And he goes on to say, the Taliban threatens me and my family many times, but I ignored all those threats and continued to serve as a Special Force Commando officer. When the Taliban was in their speech, they did not leave me in peace. Since 2018, they tried 3 times to kill me personally. The first time in 2018, they surrounded me in Jalalabad province and shot me with 3 bullets in my body. I got badly injured, and there was nothing left to do. There was nothing left but to die. Since I was injured, my colleagues moved me to Jalalabad province hospital. They send their people there to get my life and kill me again. So they sent him to the hospital, and the Taliban tried to locate him at the hospital, and they tried to kill him again. No government vehicles were allowed to take me to Kabul and treat me in a hospital. My parents came to Jalalabad and transported me in a taxi to Kabul. It was a hard situation that my parents, my family went through, and myself. As a result of that attack, I lost one of my kidneys, and my body suffered and is still suffering from the pain. I do not have good health now. Now, the man who's talking now, this dude is probably, I would throw Viking status at him. Like, this guy, I've held him as he's battled his demons. Every day he's in a battle. He wakes up in night sweats. His wife tells me about it. With everything that he went through. He was the one that was tortured. Because the story's not finished here. I went back to my job as a commando officer. After losing a kidney and going back and getting shot, he went back to his job as a commando officer and served for peace and humanity, because my goal was to serve my people and those who come to my country. And their goal is to bring peace to us, talking about the U.S. forces. Because I was on a mission in Uruzgan province, and again the Taliban attacked me. This time they threw a hand grenade bomb toward me. Again, I got injured in my hands, and my legs suffered from those injuries. Went to the hospital and got hospitalized. I came to myself and noticed that I'm still alive. My family put pressure on me to stop this job and not continue serving as a Special Force commander. I felt their feelings, as I am their son. I'm a father and a husband. And I had responsibility against them and the love they give to me. But my country, my people, and my U.S. and NATO colleagues who left their houses and their lives behind and came to my country to serve me and my people was my first option at that time. I can't leave them alone. We need each other to bring peace to this country. Yes, after I felt better, I went back to my job and continued work to serve with loyalty and honesty to my country and those who came to serve us. So he went against his family's, request because he felt the need to continue to fight for his country and alongside of us. When the Taliban took over Afghanistan, I and my brother Maksud was fighting. We fought from our hearts, but we did not know that we were sold. Our country, our bravery, and our blood were sold, and we can't do much at that time. That's how he feels. Every one of my family members was military or worked with the U.S. and NATO. By the time the Taliban came to Kabul, they started attacking and searching houses, arresting main and key people who fight with them and served in army or worked with national organizations in Afghanistan. My father was a colonel, intelligence officer for the Ministry of Defense. My brother was a special force commander. My third brother was NDS, intelligence officer. My fourth brother was an Army aircraft pilot. My house was surrounded by the Taliban, and they entered search inch by inch my house. The same thing happened in my parents' house. My family had no place to stay. We were all in hiding and moving from one relative's house to another. At that time, we can't even trust our relatives too, because the Taliban will pay relatives to give up information. We tried to get to the airport, but with my bad luck, the Taliban knows us and surrounded me and my brother. My brother was able to successfully get away from them. And I was there. They hit me in the street in front of all the people, took my money, my phone, all my ID cards. The Taliban tried to arrest me, put her in the car, but with the help of Allah, when the bad situation would occur at the airport, I was able to find a way out. This was not the end of the day. We spent very bad days in Kabul. We were hidden for more than 1 year in Kabul and can't even see outside from the windows. Every minute, we had that fear that the fear that the Taliban come to the house will happen to us with our kids. We lived for 1.5 years in Kabul with the fear of death. That was not easy. I've gone through that situation, and I can't express my feeling here with a few texts. Still, we are dealing with those traumas. Still, we are dealing with having no place to live. And there is no space in this big world for us. Still, my family lives like a prisoner in Afghanistan, fighting to stay safe and alive from the Taliban. This guy, his mom and his dad are there, and his brothers. And, we have them in safe houses. So, the freedom of movement isn't a thing. Because I served all those countries who came to Afghanistan as NATO alliance. I put my life in danger for their forces. I was always on the front lines of missions to provide a safe place for NATO forces. I saved the NATO forces' lives. I did as much as I could do. But now there's no space among those countries for us to provide me and my family shelter. See, I had a life, a house, and a happy family. I got injured many times, but I was serving with honor. Now what happened to us, we are now, and what's going to happen in the future with us and our kids, who knows? I'm not living for myself, I'm living only for my kids. My aim is to provide them a future and a better life, which is not possible in Afghanistan anymore. I'm not able to think about that bright future for my kids because no one in the world accepts us. This is a hard time for me as a father when I am thinking that I am not able to make a house for my kids.
Those are really hard stories to hear, and we are so grateful to the individuals with you for opening up about those details. And we want to remind any Afghans who are listening that these are just the kinds of stories that we hope to share in future episodes. And please share all those details. Send us a letter with as much about your situation as you feel comfortable sharing, and let us know if you need to remain anonymous. We're happy to give people pseudonyms to protect them. You can always send that correspondence to our show address, which is the Afghanistan Project Podcast at gmail.com. And Jonathon, we can't thank you enough. I mean, for joining us and telling us about all this, and then for staying with all of this flock of people in Zambia and going through the hell that you guys went through together. It's a testament to your character and to just how lovely and important these people are to you and to the others who are supporting them from afar. So we're glad that you guys are relatively safe now, and we hope that there is a speedy adjudication of all of those SIV cases.
Yeah, that's what we're all hoping for too. These guys are, I say it all the time, they're some of the most humble people I've ever met. Absolutely resilient. There's no quit in them. There's the life that they've all known. It's like the 12-year-old. When we got pulled into the police headquarters, I looked at him and I said, "Bud, I'm so sorry that we're having to go through this." And his response to me, I'll never forget it, was, "It's no problem." He goes, "This is life." I was like, "Dude, you're 12. This isn't life." But to him, that is. That's what we're dealing with.
And that's why we wish them so much better than this life that they're facing currently. And we want to thank you again and thank all our listeners for joining, sharing their time, and supporting the people of Afghanistan. So Tashakur, and we hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you for having me.